There are a growing number of people self-quarantining as the coronavirus spreads. In the last 24 hours alone, the Prime Minister of Canada and the Governor of Florida both isolated themselves after potential exposure.
Hill reporter Julia Manchester was at CPAC last month where there was a confirmed coronavirus case, and she entered self-quarantine to prevent others from potential exposure. That quarantine ends today, and she joins us now via Skype. Hey, Julia, how are you?
Hey, good, thanks. How are you guys?
Good. How are you feeling? How's the whole experience been?
Yeah, I'm completely fine, completely asymptomatic. In fact, I just came back. I tried to go to the grocery store this morning, but there was a long line around Trader Joe's. Only a couple of people were allowed in at a time. Was frustrated at first, but actually it's good to know that businesses around Washington, D.C., and I'm sure across the country are trying to at least take the proper steps to social distance and take those precautions.
Oh, that is good. That's actually good to hear.
How did you, what was this process like? How did you get notified, or was it just your news reports? How did you make the decision to self-quarantine?
Right. So what happened was over the weekend, I heard that there was someone who was infected at CPAC, and CPAC kind of made that announcement. I don't think anyone really knew they were there until this person was diagnosed. And I started to see other news outlets starting to say, look, the reporters who covered CPAC should self-quarantine. So I had a conversation with some of the higher ups at the Hill, and we decided it would be best if I would essentially work from home. It was an official self-quarantine, but I worked from home for a couple of days. And on my 2-week mark from being at CPAC is this week. I'm hearing that the 5-day mark, if you have coronavirus, is usually a telltale sign. You'll see symptoms at that point. I don't have symptoms.
Right. So, Julia, at the same time you have been working and you've been covering the campaign's responses to all of this. We've covered that here on the show. How has the evolution been? We went basically from, it's Bernie and Biden talking about Social Security and their records and all that to basically, within a matter of days, all rallies are canceled, and now they're both trying to project presidentiality. How have you looked at this?
So it's been interesting. You've seen both campaigns institute a work from home policy for their employees. You're seeing them kind of shift to more virtual events, but they both have also been given the chance, like you said, to kind of preview how they would handle a crisis like this. Now, Joe Biden really leaning into his vice presidential experience, talking about his experience helping to combat the global Ebola epidemic just a couple of years in 2014, talking about his experience there and how he would prevent that if he were president. And then Bernie Sanders leaning into Medicare for All, saying this is the system that would essentially protect us in a time like this. So it's interesting to see how they both have been contrasting their agendas with President Trump's agenda, really.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Julia, how do you think this changes the stakes for this Sunday's debate?
I think it changes the stakes in a huge way. First of all, coronavirus is going to be the major topic of the debate. Obviously, you're going to see them both kind of debating how they will handle such a situation if they were elected president, and they'll probably try to pick at each other's plans and such. But the debate itself has really obviously changed. This was supposed to be in Arizona. There was originally going to be a press filing center, a spin room, a live audience. Then we heard this week that the filing center, the spin room, the audience were all scrapped for safety precautions. But now CNN has actually moved the debate to their studios in Washington. So the entire optics of the debate are going to be entirely different.
Yeah. And Julia, what do you expect to see in the coming days? One of the things we're trying to tracking closely is whether the primary itself goes forward. Has there been any indication? Are people planning for that, maybe with the campaign staffers that you've spoken to?
Well, actually, I've been in touch with a number of county and state officials in Florida, Arizona, Illinois, and Ohio, and they've all said, look, most of those states, or all of those states, have the option of early voting or absentee ballots. They are encouraging the use of absentee ballots in particular, especially for states like Florida or Arizona, where there are very high populations of elderly voters who are highly susceptible to this disease or virus. So they are definitely encouraging that. that. And they're also seeing, an uptick in early voting. So the primaries for now are definitely going on. And I think you're just going to see officials taking the proper precautions to go forward.
Yeah, I mean, you've got college students who've been sent home. What does that do to their ability to vote? I mean, it's just like it's hard to wrap your head around what impact this is going to have on people's lives, people's health, people's economic situation. Julia, what do we know about the difference in the two plans that these candidates have offered?
Right. So in terms of Joe Biden, both plans definitely do call for more available testing, obviously, of course, because that's obviously a huge contrast, I think, with the Trump administration right now. Bernie Sanders' plan definitely pinpointing the issue of Medicare for all. You don't see that in Joe Biden's plan because he's obviously not calling for Medicare for all. So I would say that's the biggest difference. But both plans are also calling for more paid family leave, more paid sick leave. And that is a debate we're actually seeing on Capitol Hill right now. Democrats really pushing for that amid this crisis. We see Republicans are a bit uneasy about that because they don't know how long that would last and such. So we're hearing that we could potentially see a deal between the Trump administration and House Democrats today. Nancy Pelosi saying it's potentially a likelihood. So we'll be on the lookout for that as well.
All right, Julia, be well, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Julia.
Thank you.
Next on Rising, the Hills correspondent Reed Wilson. He explains why it's so important to cancel major events during a pandemic.